Welcome to The Burn Beyond Firestop. I'm your host, John Zalepka. Our show is focused on life safety and code compliance in the built environment, which puts me on a mission to find the most interesting people in the space and get their unique perspectives. Our hope is that our listening audience walks away with an understanding of how our guests and their businesses also contribute to the promotion of life safety of whatever is being built. Now, our show is brought to you, as always, by Specified Technologies, also known as STI Firestop. And since 1990, STI has been a leading global provider of innovative fire protective solutions that help stop the spread of fire, smoke, and hot gases, or what's commonly referred to as passive fire protection. So our guest today also finds himself in the passive fire protection industry after spending most of his career on the active side in fire suppression. And Luke Connery is a senior vice president at Conquest Fire Spray, where they've developed a portfolio of solutions called Flame Bar, which limit the spread of fire and smoke through ventilation ducts. So we'll get into all of that. But this is critical in life safety of any building. But we'll let Luke talk all about that. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Hey, John, thanks very much for having me. I'm excited to be on The Burn. This is cool. You don't get to do podcasts every day, so when you get invited in, you jump on the opportunity. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you being here. And I don't know if you listen to the show. I don't want to assume that you do, but if you do, you know that I always like to start on a personal note rather than jumping into the whole business of things. And so I want to take you back to your college days at WPI, Worcester Polytech Institute. Now, after doing a little digging on LinkedIn, I see that you played NCAA football there. So, of course, I had to cross-reference you on Google. And when I didn't find any statistics on you, I assume you must have been an offensive lineman.
I was an offensive lineman. That's right. Yeah. Division III football over at WPI. The Engineers. Gompy was our logo. Gompy the Goat, which is a big name on school. But we had a lot of fun. Played a lot of great teams in the area and the surrounding region, and a lot of great memories from playing football at WPI. Yeah.
Awesome. So my first question is, how did the time on the team and or specifically that brotherhood or that camaraderie that comes with being an offensive lineman help you in your current role as you build out your business development team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. I mean, it's, the grit and the determination and the stick-to-itiveness, I think, is really what comes through. The discipline, working together as a unit, not an individual performer, not like one of these, receivers that's out there, catching balls or doing whatever these touchdown dances or whatever it is, we work together as a team. And so you see that every day, not only with the other, engineering business development team members, but on the inside of the business too, with, inside sales, business development, our outside sales team. You got to work together as a team. So I think that's what translates most.
Absolutely. I understand it. I was an offensive lineman, and then my senior year, they let me put the gloves on and catch some passes as a tight end. So I get it. I get it. I know what it means to be part of that unit. So digging in a little bit further, I see that you are a professional engineer. You studied mechanical engineering as an undergrad, received your master's in fire protection engineering. I mean, you must love engineering. Where did you get that passion for engineering from?
It's one of those things where, I used to think once upon a time that I was going to go design cars, and really I wanted to design Cadillacs. That was my thing. That's what I set out to go do. And then I got to WPI in Worcester and found out that they had a fire protection engineering program. And I said, what is that? And, learning more about the burn lab and, just understanding a little bit more about the subject matter, learning that there aren't very many schools in the country that offered a master's program in fire protection engineering. I said, you know what, I'm gonna move in that direction. So started doing it, and found out, hey, you can light stuff on fire and you're gonna get paid for it. I said, sign me up, and I was on my way. From there, look, the WPI does such a good job at placing their students at in internships, and you really get set up well for, your career. And my career ended up being on the suppression side of the business, and, I was off to the races. So John, my first job coming out of school was in explosion protection for a little company called Kidde Fenwal. which took me all over the world, helping people with their explosion risks. So picture yourself as a 21-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22-year-old doing that kind of work. Pretty cool stuff,
Yeah, you get to blow stuff up, light things on fire, watch things burn. That's awesome. What could be better?
Yeah.
And you get paid for it.
Yeah. I mean, what a tremendous career opportunity. So did that for a little while, and maybe 3-4 years into it, I had a buddy of mine worked over at FM Global, had just joined up over at Tyco, and he said, have you ever thought about coming over and doing sprinklers on the suppression side of the industry? And I said, let's learn more about it. And long story short, I ended up over there back in like 2004, I think it was. And, I was with Tyco for about 15 years and did all sorts of stuff over there. But that's what introduced me to the laboratory. That's what introduced me to fire testing and, the research and development side of the industry, which really, most people think about, products and solutions are tested and listed, but most of research and development is not about success. It's about failure. Most of the time in the lab, you're failing these tests, so you know what can go wrong, and you learn from that what you need to do in order to pass the test. And I think that's having that experience firsthand really set me up for, okay, where else, do you find, testing and listing of products. And so 15 years later, seeing this opportunity on the passive side of the industry, I said, that's really attractive to me. Let me go learn more about it. And fire rated ventilation systems really are more interesting, and there's more depth there than anyone has any reason to imagine. So I'm really happy with what I'm doing now.
Cool, yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that, but I definitely want to go back to where you developed and patented a water mist system. I mean, that's pretty cool. Let's not skip over that. That's actually being an engineer, right? Like making things work, designing stuff. When did you eventually get that bite for the business development side of things, where you're like, you know what, I know this stuff so well that I can teach others how to get preferred spec position on it?
You're really great at sort of digging for the good stuff, because I do think that there's a lot of lessons here, a lot of insights here. I think water mist. So, and this wasn't the suppression mode stuff where it was like, hey, put out these big flammable liquids fires in relatively small, medium or large size rooms. This is, hey, do what a sprinkler does in a compartment like the room you're sitting in or the room that I'm sitting in, but you can use about 1/3 of the water, and figure that out. Design that nozzle, right? And that was no easy task. So I think when we developed that system, me and the people that I was working alongside, I think we did 150, 200, small compartment fire tests, and that was, John, one test out of 5 that you needed to pass in order to get the listing, right? So think about the blood, sweat, and tears and the iteration, and we were trying to be smart about it. And so when I talk about the failure associated with research and development, and when I talk about sort of the stick-to-itiveness and the grit that comes out of that athletic experience that I had, right, playing football, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you got to lean into it, expect the best, expect the good outcome, and eventually you'll get there. So what happened was, these systems are pretty complicated. Water mist systems, water spray systems. I was a part of the special hazards group at Tyco at the time. And basically you have customers that call up and they have questions. How does this work? How does that work? What should I expect? What should this design density be? Where are the codes that back this up? And you just do your best to help these people out. So I loved helping people make sense of these things. So people have these needs and you help them out. And before long, you start connecting dots, right? And by connecting the dots, before you know it, you become this subject matter expert. And then somebody in senior management comes over and says, hey, have you ever thought about doing sort of a technical sales role? At Tyco, they called it business development. And I said, I think I would love that. So I was kind of an experiment. I was the first engineer that they brought into that role at Tyco, and I did pretty well. So that was my entree into technical sales, business development, and I haven't looked back. Basically, that's what I've done ever since, and that's been the past 15 years, John.
And so you've been just trying to drive specifications. I mean, do you have any tips for some of our listening audience out there that might be trying to work their way into a spec here or there?
Yeah, I think, we joke in engineering business development. We call it commission breath, right? Engineers, specifying engineers, architects can smell commission breath a mile away. And so if you come in there sort of project oriented, I want to win this job, I want to win that job, you're really going to turn a lot of people off. But if what you're offering isn't actually project specific, but it's education about, a corner of the industry or a part of the industry, particularly where people, aren't, there isn't a lot of education, there isn't a lot of information. I think especially engineers, these are curious people. They're interested to know more and learn and understand, right? And if you can provide that depth, you can become, a subject matter expert in their eyes, and then they come to you for solutions. It's always easiest if you have the, best portfolio in a particular space as well. I mean, STI is right there on the Firestop side, so you guys have this experience. And the product that I work with today, Flame Bar, we're the most specified and the largest fire-rated duct in the industry today. So we can talk a little bit more about that, but combining the education with the sort of, how do I do this on the project, the applications, expertise, and being helpful to people. Like, if they're going to spend their time talking to you, how did you improve their day? How did you improve their week? How did you improve their project? How did you improve their value to their client? If you can do those things, you can influence specifications.
Educate, be helpful, add value. I love it. I always like to get three things in there, even though I held up two fingers. That's fine. So, we do a lot of that as well, trying to get that spec position, educating, offering credits to architects and engineers. It's the kind of thing you have to do when you're up against the large corporations like we are. And I guess you were working for a big company, Tyco, and I guess Johnson Controls as well. And so I guess let's jump over to what you're doing now. Here you are on the other end of the world, right? So Conquest Fire Spray, I don't have your financials, but I'm going to assume you're slightly smaller than Johnson. And on top of that, you're now on the passive side as opposed to the active side. So tell us a little bit more about how you're finding life these days.
It's the passive side of the fire protection industry is much more interesting than you would have thought. Fire rated ventilation systems, when I first came in, it was just learning a little bit about, okay, so this is a technical product, got it. Well, so what are we talking about here? And really what I have found is it's contrasting the, what is correct per codes and standards with the status quo, also known as, code by osmosis, right? People have been doing things a certain way for 10 years or 15 or 20 years, so it must be code compliant, right? And what we find is that in a lot of cases, it's not. It's not. And it's not for lack of trying. I think people want to get it right. They just don't understand sort of the technical underpinning and the performance requirements. I say it quite a bit, John, but, Flame Bar is the product. Fire-rated ventilation systems is really what we're talking about. And it's not 70 degrees and sunny, okay? It's 2,000 degrees 2 hours later, 3 hours later, 4 hours later. So everything else is a hot mess on the floor in the building, and these systems need to continue to operate. And this is the actual fire-rated duct systems, right? And then also, the fire stops that folks like STI, have built around the fire-rated duct system. So these are fire and life safety systems, and it's hard for people who maybe they're not fire protection engineers and they don't think that deeply about what we're talking about here. So it's up to us, I think, in the industry to help people to understand, the importance and criticality of these systems.
So Conquest Fire Spray is the company, and you manufacture flame bar solutions. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of that prefabricated ductwork that is flame bar?
Yeah. So I tell my clients it's an engineered product first, and then it's a ductwork product second. Okay, which is very true. Again, these are technical products. Flame bar, it has an endothermic coating on it. It's a pretty thin, just a millimeter thick. And what we're doing is we're trading down significantly the amount of mass required to successfully perform in these tests. The other thing that we're doing is there's two levels of protection that you can get with fire rated duct. Two levels of listings, testing and listings. One of them is known as fire outside, and one of them is known as fire inside. So fire outside, you can think about it like a winter coat. Am I going to be able to stop the fire that's in this compartment from getting into my duct? Yeah, and that's a pretty easy to achieve listing, to be honest with you. What's required by the code and what most fire rated products out there don't have is a fire inside listing, which is known as duct B. And so if you look at the code, it's pretty clear around symmetry requirements. If you look at a shaft wall, for example, any fire barrier wall, you got to test both sides. You test this side, you got to test that side, and you're only going to get a listing for the weaker of the two sides. And that's the side that's going to be tested from this point going forward. So any other testing that you do, you test that weak side. Well, in fire rated duct, that's the inside of the duct. And so flame bar is always a duct B fire inside performer, and so always meets the code requirements for the whole range of tested and listed sizes, up to some pretty huge sizes, 800 square feet. And I've never seen a plenum that's 800 square feet in cross section, but if there is one, and these systems, these fire rated ventilation systems keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think someday maybe we get there. Flame bar would be a good solution for that application. Yeah.
So what are some other potential applications? I'm imagining it's great for retrofit shaft solutions. How else can you possibly use it?
Actually, it's interesting that you say it that way. There's a lot of office projects that are kind of in some limbo period because of the pandemic and because of office demand. And there's been, especially in the Northeast, but in other parts of the country as well, a lot of projects which were once office projects that are being pivoted over to laboratory projects, right? And an office building isn't really ideal for a laboratory building, so there's a lot of bridge building, let's say, for the engineering community, the design community, architects too, to make what was once an office project ready for a laboratory project, and shaft space for hazardous exhaust and otherwise is at a premium. It's not easy to come by. And so, yeah, you can use flame bar to be really low profile. We are an uninsulated fire rated duct product, so we can fit into some pretty tight spaces. And then we also have a shaft alternative solution, or low profile shaft solution, where if you're using flame bar riser inside the shaft, right, you only need to use one layer of drywall around the perimeter. So you can go up against the existing shaft and you can core vertically through the building, and with two sides of drywall, you now have a fully 2-hour rated shaft moving vertically through the building. So, but there's a variety of applications, inline fan enclosures that are tested and listed, damper omission, if you have a stair press system, elevator press system. I mentioned hazardous exhaust. If the code says you can't use a damper to protect that penetration through that fire barrier wall or through that shaft, what are you going to do? Well, you can do a built architectural solution, but most design teams don't want to have a fire rated corridor moving through their building. And so they end up using fire-rated duct. So again, you can use flame bar. It's a symmetry performing fire-rated duct solution. So yeah, it's really great. Again, the depth and breadth of applications. And you can almost think about it. This education that we provide to the market. Is understanding the capabilities for their projects. It may not necessarily be a project that they're working on right now, but it may provide their ability to, more creative license for how they design a building in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, that seems pretty cool what you guys have going on over there. It seems like there's a lot less coordination, probably saves time and money to a certain extent. And not that you're trying to take work away from the insulators or the carpenters, but sometimes you just don't have the room. Or like you said, in these retrofit applications, you don't want to shut down the whole building to start building shaft walls. So really cool stuff. I like it.
John, I think that's a good point. Look, fire-rated duct, and oftentimes, if you're in a supply air or a make-up air situation, you still need insulation. And so we're not saying that flame bar can't be insulated and won't be insulated. In fact, oftentimes it is. And so it's not a one or the other. It's what is the best solution for the application? Let's go get it. And I think you nailed it. From a total installed cost standpoint, all things considered, flame bar is always going to be the most cost effective. We try to make it that way, which is the other advantage that we have at being sort of a growing company, is we can go kind of target and then be the best solution on all dimensions for the project team.
Great stuff. All right, so Luke, where can people find out more information about Flame Bar and Conquest Fire Spray?
I say the website. It's at conquest-firespray.com. You reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation. Anytime anyone wants to talk about fire-rated ventilation systems, fire-rated duct, and we're even starting to move into electrical enclosures, believe it or not. It's two-way learning. A lot of this stuff is still in its infancy. We can provide the best thinking on the topic, but we're also all ears. If people have hey, I got this application on my project, we're trying to learn, trying to figure out what our options are, happy to work with those folks too, and we learn along the way.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you if you manufacture any other products or if maybe there's something that you could speak of, but it's great to see that you're a nimble enough company that if you get that feedback from the field that, hey, maybe we can test something, maybe we'll work with you and design it if we don't have it already.
Yeah, I mean, that's what is the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. I think step one, have a really good problem statement, right? What is the problem to be solved? Once you see that and you hear it from multiple people, hey, maybe there is an application there. Let's go vet it a little bit further. And yeah, so these electrical enclosures that I was talking about, it's a new product for us. The furnace test that's referenced by the code, you guys are, you've got to go test to 2,000 degrees, right? So your fire stops are also tested at 2,000 degrees. And then they're hose stream tested. You got to hit it from this side and that side with the hose stream, and it tries to thermally shut. So we've got to go do the same testing in fire-rated duct world. Electrical enclosures is the same thing, but with electrical enclosures, you're also running some kind of signal through that conductor or through the coax cable or whatever it might be. What does temperature rise do to that signal, right? And the answer to the question is bad things. It does bad things. So yes, temperature, is the pass-fail criteria for the normal furnace test. But if you can maintain temperatures below a certain threshold, there's some real advantage to the electrical systems that are running through that enclosure. And that's what we found, that's what we've heard. More and more authorities having jurisdiction are required. These are for these the ERCS systems, the emergency radio communication systems in buildings. Yeah. So more AHJs are requiring that, especially connections, whether it's being a union, coupling, splitting, 1 to 2, you've got to have a rated connection. And if you don't, you're putting these, again, It's not 70 degrees and sunny. These are fire events that you've got to survive through, right? And so yeah, exciting time to be a part of the passive industry for sure.
Great stuff. Any other trade shows or exhibits or anywhere you're going to be out there people can meet you in person?
Yeah, you know what we do nowadays, a lot more is virtual outreach, to be honest with
Okay,
you.
sure.
So, NFPA just kind of came and went in Boston, and we find ourselves involved in a lot of SFPE conversations, and around the country, the local chapter meetings. We hope to be in front of those chapters increasingly. But the virtual outreach, if the pandemic brought anything that's a positive upside, and you got to try to look for the silver lining, it's the ability to do virtual outreach. And in my experience, a lot of the design team members in particular have really embraced it. And it's nice to be able to take a meeting and have 6 or 7 different project team members in different locations across the country be able to look at each other on the same screen, share their screen, draw on each other's drawings, that kind of thing. So we do a lot of virtual nowadays, but I think, I also think that we'll be getting back out there more and more in person to meet people, because you can't beat a handshake, especially on some of these, look, if somebody's going to do a multi-million-dollar job, and you want to be able to put a face with a name at some point, so...
So Luke's not afraid to get on a plane, anybody out there listening, and we'll be sure to put some of those links in the show notes for conquest-firespray.com, and also we'll have a link to Luke's LinkedIn profile as well, so you can connect with him there. Sound good?
Yeah, that's awesome, John. Thank you very much, dude.
Awesome. I appreciate the time, Luke. It was a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better. And I would like to thank everybody else out there that's listening in. We know that there's a lot of podcasts these days, and you've chosen to listen to ours. We're humbled. Thank you very much. And if you do like the show, please share it with a friend. Support it. Leave a review. I hear that's a good thing. And until next time, this is The Burn.